Hey, what's going on everyone? In this Master Grade review, we'll be looking at the premium Bandai exclusive, Master Grade Gundam F90. In my opinion, the Gundam F90 is a really underappreciated suit. Not only does it have an amazingly vibrant design, looking like the Gundam Alex's little brother, but its 1990 manga series is a great standalone Gundam story. As always, we'll be reviewing this Master Grade Gundam F90 in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and the gimmicks. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Personally, I'm really hoping this Gundam F90 can be as simple and fun as its great short manga series. Alright, let's jump right into this build. Now, despite being a premium Bandai exclusive, this Master Grade F90 is an entirely new mold. Yeah, there's absolutely zero reused runners here. That's not to say it doesn't take heavy inspiration from other kits though, mainly the Master Grade F91 version 2.0. This inner frame specifically has very similar engineering to that F91. The thighs and hips are extremely similar, and the upper arm frame is a borderline copy. The waist even has the same pull-out gimmick for these skirts. Of course, considering in canon this F90 was a stepping stone in the creation of the F91, these similarities make total sense. Still, this is a brand new mold, so even with the heavy influence, Bandai threw in quite a few extra frills to help differentiate it. One of my favorites is the use of braided piping for the back of the ankles and the front of the foot. I just love the added texture it gives the frame, you know? The head build was also improved on this build. Like the Turn A Gundam, these eyes are a separate piece that you plug into a visor piece. They just look fantastic, and because they come in clear, you can paint these eyes whatever color you want. I decided to go with a deep blue to match this armor. I also painted the visor piece a darker black to really amp up the contrast. Regardless, if for whatever reason you don't want to paint these eyes, you're given the standard eye sticker to use instead. Moving on to this armor, the major concern I had when this kit was first announced was whether or not Bandai could pull off the F90's color separation. I mean, there's just so many colors squeezed into such a small package here. Having built this kit though, I can safely say Bandai just nailed this part separation. Seriously, these red pieces on the knee, these yellow vents on the feet, even these yellow thrusters on the backpack, they're all separate pieces. It's just amazing. Bandai even goes one step further and lets inner frame poke through on many of these vents, like these on the knee for example. All I had to do to get this crisp black on yellow look was take the vent off, paint this section of frame black with a Gundam marker, then snap the vents back over top. It's really that easy. The only mandatory sticker here is this black and red section on the ankle guard. It comes as inner frame that pokes through a separate white piece. So while I haven't gotten around to it yet, you could easily just paint it black, then place one of these included triangle decals over top. Speaking of these triangle decals, Bandai provided 2 sets of decals for them, one peel and stick and the other water slide. This is such a nice touch, as it lets you choose what works best for you. Also, these triangles are given nice deep channels to help you place the decals, or if you're daring, maybe you could paint these triangles instead. Onto this detailing, there's a little bit of upgrading you can do with the Gundam marker on this kit. Here's a quick list. Starting with these legs, there's some channels on the lower half that benefit from some gray paint. Same goes for this channel on the front and back of the thigh, and these tick marks on the side of the thigh. There's also this tick mark on this blue section that I hit with a black Gundam marker. Moving our way on up, there are 2 deep tick marks on the waist that are surprisingly prominent once you add gray paint in them. On the upper arm, we have another deep channel on the front and back of the bicep, and a nice little vent on the side that could use some gray. I also added some gray to this big dash on the side of the forearm. Next, on the head I used gray paint for the mouth section, as the channels were deep enough for paint to really take hold, so I figured why not. Lastly, I used black for these molded in vents on the side of the head, just to add a little bit more depth here. You know, aside from taking some inspiration from the F91 version 2.0, this premium Bandai exclusive really didn't cut any corners. Really, this F90's build was a blast, deserving a perfect 5 out of 5. Honestly, you could put this kit on store shelves and no one would really notice it's more of a niche release. Now that we've got him built, let's take a look over his appearance. Like the Gundam Alex, this F90 just wouldn't be the same without the abundance of color scattered around this design, and thankfully, this Master Grade doesn't disappoint. The blue specifically has a deep saturation to it, but still retains that vibrance found in the more cartoony style of the F90's manga. Same goes for the red found in the chest and the head. It's just brilliant enough to catch your eye, but not enough that it distracts from the surrounding blue. Also, while I'm not the biggest fan of this more primary yellow, as I usually prefer a bit of orange mixed in, I just can't deny how well this yellow blends with both the vivid blue and red. The inner frame also has a nice saturated bluish gray color to it that really looks great when contrasted with the pure white base color of the armor. Really, these colors are just amazing. The proportions on this kit are really interesting. Since the F90 doesn't have a dedicated anime appearance, at least as of this video, I was unsure if Bandai would go full-on modern with hard edges and a slender silhouette, or if they would try to retain some of the manga's more rounded bulkiness. Amazingly, Bandai seemed to have pulled both off. Starting with these legs, they're super streamlined and wouldn't look too out of place on more modern designs. However, upon closer inspection, you'll notice some manga-style curves bulking them up. The arms too are pretty slender, and yet the size of these blue gauntlets really beef them up. Then there's this chest, which has a great mix of that late 80s, early 90s style heft and a more modern hourglass shape. Finally, capping it all off, we have this head, which is just the right size for this body. I'm also a huge fan of its more rounded design. All in all, this F90's proportions are really the best of both worlds. Bandai also found a perfect middle ground when adding panel lines. While there are a few tick marks every so often to spice things up, there's a noticeable lack of added lines here, leading to a really clean take on the F90. This was extremely smart on Bandai's part, as there's already more than enough to take in with these colors, so excess panel lines would have really overloaded you. The decals for this kit are exactly what you'd want, with a ton of caution signs, but also quite a few model numbers. I especially love the red F90 decal you could use for the shoulders to help it match the F91. I keep telling myself I can't use it because that's not how the suit appeared in the manga, but something tells me after this review I'm gonna cave in. All these decals are water slide, by the way, so you'll definitely want to use some top coat after applying these. I flat out love the look of this kit. Its appearance is just a great blend of old and new, deserving another 5 out of 5. Despite this kit's small size, this F90 always stands out. Okay, time to see what poses we can get this kit into. As always, starting with these feet, you get absolutely nothing. The ankles really make up for this though, with a great side-to-side tilt on a swivel and a hinge. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything going on here, and it just works great. You also get a pretty decent 180-degree bend from this knee. Not bad considering how simple this build was. These hips are the same as the Gundam F91, being a swivel on a peg. You get pretty good all-around movement, but I have found the leg connection to be a little bit weak. The peg here just isn't long enough for a sturdy connection. Also, if you apply too much pressure to this connection, the armor pieces will begin to pry off. These waist skirts have the same gimmick as the F91, in that you can pull out the waist section and swing the whole hip section forwards. While this would be great for some hunched over aerial poses, like the F91, I really didn't find myself needing to use it too much. Still, it's always nice to have the option, and there's no real downside to it, so it's all good in my book. The standard skirts are exactly what you'd expect. The back skirt is locked in place though. Moving on up to this chest, there's quite a few tilts in here that allow for above average ab crunches in addition to the usual spin. Onto these shoulders, you get a pretty solid pop out here. Nothing crazy, but still super useful. There's also the standard spins and lateral movement. Working our way down the arm, you have the basic 360-degree spin on top. While it feels slightly weak, it's never popped off on me, so no complaints so far. The elbow gets a solid 135-degree bend, even with these huge forearm gauntlets. Speaking of the gauntlets, they can spin on their own separate swivel, allowing you to get them up and out of the way for certain poses. These hands are on a very tight ball joint, so you're kinda limited to just spins here. This kit uses more modern interchangeable fingers instead of my preferred 2.0 style hands. I guess it makes sense though, considering this kit is so small, the fingers might be a little finicky. Anyway, you get a standard set of closed fist, a set of beam saber hands, and both a left and right rifle hand. All the essentials. Lastly, moving on to this head, you get some decent forwards and backwards movement from a hinge in the neck, and a solid amount of movement from a ball joint. It's the usual stuff really. All in all, the articulation here is pretty solid. While a few of these joints leave a little to be desired, this kit can still hit some pretty great poses. We'll have to give this kit's articulation a respectable 4 out of 5. While this isn't the best articulation I've seen in a modern kit, he can certainly hold his own. Lastly, let's see what else comes in the box. First up is his token beam rifle. This design can look a little bit bland if you just snap build it, but thanks to some decent part separation, painting it wouldn't be too hard. You can also hold this rifle very well, thanks to a dedicated rifle hand, and despite its size, it poses no weight issues. I found it a little hard to get a two-hand pose though, but it's doable with some patience. You can store this rifle on the back of the skirt with the help of these 3 flaps, so it's always on hand for him. 4 ammo packs are included with this rifle. I tend to store 1 on the rifle, 2 on the shield, and the last one on the waist. Next up are his beam sabers. I'm a huge fan of this bright cyan color. It's always so cool to see a Gundam type suit break away from that standard pink, you know? Once again, thanks to some dedicated hands, you can hold up these beam sabers with no problem, leading to some pretty great posing potential. I will say these hands lack pegs though, meaning the handles will more often than not be held at a slight angle. Sure, they'll stay in place just fine, but yeah, it's a little weird once you notice it. Both sabers store in the backpack, just like most standard Gundams. Lastly, for his basic arsenal, we have his shield. This is such an interesting design, being one of the most colorful shields I think I've ever seen in Gunpla. All of these colors are separate pieces by the way, so painting the shield would be super easy. The shield connects to the forearm with a fairly stable peg and a swivel, allowing for some basic movement. Speaking of connections though, the main gimmick of this suit is its abundance of hard points, which is basically just a location that you can plug something in. Their main purpose is to provide connections to the additional mission packs, each sold separately of course. I personally haven't tried any of these mission packs though, as I only bought the base kit. Honestly, I just prefer the F90's original design, so slapping on a bunch of random gun barrels really doesn't do it for me. Still though, that F-type with the beam boxing glove, that one's tempting. Again though, I'm just reviewing the base kit here, so I'm not really factoring in his expanded arsenal. Regardless, even though this is only the base release, I would have liked a little bit more included. Maybe some effect parts or one of the cheaper mission packs. At the very least, Bandai could have included that cannon featured on the cover of the F90's manga. Considering this kit cost $50 before shipping, I don't think that's too much to ask here. Regardless, if I do get any of these add-on sets, I'll totally make a separate review for them. Anyway, that about does it for these gimmicks. While this kit feels pretty sparse on extras, what you do get works as you would expect. We'll give the gimmicks of this F90's base release a solid 4 out of 5. It just needs a little something more, especially given the P-Bandai prices. Alright, it's time to round this all up here. The build was a 5 out of 5. It's a simple build with amazing part separation and easy detailing options. You really can't ask for much more. The appearance received another 5 out of 5. It's a great mix of modernization and more manga-style bulkiness. The articulation received a 4 out of 5. He's all around about average for a modern release. And lastly, the gimmicks received a 4 out of 5. Everything works perfectly, but he does feel a little lacking, even when judged as just the base suit. Tallying all that up and dividing, this Master Grade Gundam F90 receives a 4.5 out of 5. In terms of a percentage, he receives a 90%. In my opinion, that's a really high score for a premium Bandai exclusive. I'm just so used to P-Bandai kits being nothing more than color swaps, and even when they did put out an original kit, Bandai would often cut corners. None of that is found with this Gundam F90 though. The build, while simple, is everything you'd expect from a modern release, and features amazing part separation. The appearance is perfect in just about every way, and he fares pretty well in terms of articulation and gimmicks. This F90 is a fantastic master grade that more than stands up to the quality found in regular releases. Honestly, the only real complaint I have here is that it is a premium Bandai exclusive. This kit is just too good to be locked behind time restrictions and marked up prices. Really, this would be a great beginner kit for more casual fans, and yet, those are the exact people that are going to miss out here. Hopefully with all the mission pack variations Bandai's made with this kit, you'll be able to track down a reseller with a reasonable enough price, because this really is a fun kit that just about anyone can enjoy. Alright, feel free to ask any questions you have about this kit below, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, where I post updates, work in progress builds, the whole deal. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.